Hello YouTube, and today I'm bringing you the Astrox 100ZX review. This is another iteration of the Astrox 100 model, which is slightly different to the Astrox 100ZZ. This iteration is slightly cheaper than the ZZ, which is priced at 220, whereas this one is priced at 170. But that is not to say that this racket is worse than the ZZ. It's just targeted at a different style of player, a different level of player, and just has a different feeling overall to this racket. So before you make any rash decisions to quickly buy the best and top model of the Astrox 100, I think it'd be wise to have a look at this review and actually see whether this one will suit you more than the ZZ. Just some quick specifications introduction of this racket. I have the 4U G5 model. 4U slightly lighter than 3U, and G5 has a smaller grip size than G4. And this racket, if you look on the website, it says extra stiff for the flexibility of it. But through my own testing and letting other people use, I can say that it is slightly less extra stiff than some of the other racket models, for example like the Dura Z Strike, the ZZ, or even the Voltrix Z Force 2, which also claim to be extra stiff. I would say in terms of feeling, personally, it feels more like a stiff at most. But that could not just be all down to the shaft. Of course, if you're hitting the shuttle, you'll be using the frame as well. And I think partly due to the softer feeling is the lack of black micro core, which is present on the ZZ. And this one uses something different called the Nano Mesh Neo. The recommended string tension for this racket for the 4U model is 20 to 28 pounds of tension, whereas the 3U model is 21 to 29 pounds of tension. There's something cool about the way they constructed this racket. So traditionally, high-end YONEX rackets are all produced in Japan. Well, this time they produced the shaft in Japan, but they produced the frame in Taiwan. So it's like a hybrid, and this is to help reduce the cost. And it is one of the cheapest high-end Astrox rackets in the entire lineup, without sacrificing performance. The frame of this racket is made from Nano Mesh Neo, like I said, tungsten and high modulus graphite. The shaft is made from high modulus graphite and NAMD. So you might notice there's some little differences in the material used in this racket compared to the Astrox 100ZZ. So just a quick thing to point out about the cosmetics of this racket. It is half matte and half glossy, very much like the ZZ. So the coloured side, in this case, it's the green, blue-ish purple. I don't even know how to explain it because it's pearlescent, and in different lightings it shows up as a different colour. This side is matte, whereas the glossy side is the darker side. It's just a different style of design that YONEX is implementing. Some people don't like it. Initially, I didn't like it as well, like I mentioned in the ZZ, but I think it's kind of grown on me. But I don't think the design is the biggest factor when it comes to choosing a racket. Yeah. Another thing I want to talk about is that this racket is 10 millimeters longer in size compared to conventional rackets. So essentially, it's the same size as the Astrox 88D, the Astrox 99. The Astrox 100ZZ as well has the 10 millimeter longer length, and this just gives you a bit more leverage and it's more suited towards attacking play. So the first string that I used on this racket is the BG66 Force, which is the same string I tested out on the ZZ, and then after I broke that, I also tried out the BG80 on this racket. For control players, I would say Aerobite Boost on this racket would be the best, whereas if you're a power player, 66 Force is more suited. Personally, after testing BG80 on this racket, I feel it is not the best performing string for this racket, although I love the BG80, for example, on like the Astrox 88D. So let's go through the technology used in this racket. And like the Astrox 100ZZ, there's big changes to this racket. So I think it'll be best if I run through the things that are similar first and then go on to things that are different once again. The things that are similar on this racket is that it still uses nanometric, which is on most high-end YONEX rackets. It has the new grommet pattern and construction. It has the solid feel core to reduce vibrations and also give you more of a solid feel. And it still has that hybrid between the Aero box frame, which is different to the dual optimum system on Dura rackets, so don't get confused with that. And of course, because this is an Astrox racket, it has NAMD graphite. A big question that people ask is whether this racket and the ZZ has the compact frame. And the answer is no. It doesn't have a compact frame, but it has an isometric rework. So, you know this kind of squarish shape you see on rackets nowadays? Well, it's not exactly square, but it's a hybrid between an oval and a square. It gives you a really big sweet spot, and it's been really successful for a long time. And it hasn't really exactly changed much over the years, apart from here and there you see like a compact frame, for example on the Dura Z Strike and the Voltrix Z Force 2. But this time they decided to bring in a new change, keep its standard frame size, but implement the tucked-in grommets and an even more squarer shape. And this is to make the sweet spot bigger. It is exactly the same frame shape and size as the Astrox 100ZZ. So this racket, like the Astrox 100ZZ, has the rotational generator system reworked. The system consists of 3 counterweights, one at the top of the racket, one at the T-joint and one at the grip. And essentially what you have in Astrox rackets is the power of a head-heavy balance racket, whilst maintaining the speed and agility when it comes to handling like an even balance racket. But still, it is not a perfect system before, and rackets like the Astrox 88D and the 99 seems to be a bit too head heavy and a bit hard to handle for some players. So in this racket they reworked it to make it a bit more user friendly when it comes to the defensive side especially, so you can kind of change direction of your racket without too much torque. This racket also sports the new energy boost cap like the Astrox 100ZZ. So the energy boost cap consists of 2 things. It's the ergonomic sides to put your thumb whenever you're at the front of the court, and also that U shape you see when you face the front of the racket, and that's to kind of direct how the shaft flexes. But that's also seen on rackets like the Astrox 88 and the 99. So that U-shaped part is nothing new, it's only the ergonomic feel. So on the Astrox 100ZX, it has an extra slim shaft as opposed to the hyper slim shaft on the ZZ. It doesn't mean it's thick though, as the name says, it is extra slim. And it is actually slimmer than most high-end rackets as well. It's just, the ZZ is just crazy. It's noticeable even between this racket and that racket just by feeling. This racket uses the Rexis hollow shaft, which is like a more conventional type of shaft on badminton rackets, whereas on the ZZ they implemented a completely solid core full of NAMD just to create a bit more of a snappy feel. This racket doesn't have that. What is missing from this racket as opposed to the Astrox 100ZZ is the black micro core, the hyper slim shaft and also the new T-joint. So how does this racket play? Most people would assume just because it's cheaper is not going to be as good and automatically the ZZ is better. However, that is not the case. So this racket is suited to intermediate players or below. However, if you're advanced, you can still use it. The reason I'm saying this is because this racket has a softer feel and it has a bit more whip to it. So in terms of control factor, it is less controlled than the ZZ, which is probably the most precise racket you have out there at the moment on the market. However, the slight whip to it gives it a bit more kind of like a explosive power when it comes to defense and also those mid-court shots, and I find this easier to use to attack those flatter shots than the ZZ. In addition, having a slight give to it and a bit of a softer feel is a bit more forgiving to most players that don't have like a perfect technique. So with stiffer shafts and also more solid feel, it gives you kind of a bit, it gives you a better touch, so you have a bit more precision and you know where your shot's going. However, sacrifice with that is if you don't hit perfectly in the center, the feeling is not exactly great and a shot quality could be poor. Whereas on a slightly more flexier and a softer feel racket, this can help to compensate even if you don't hit perfectly. In terms of raw power, like the Astrox 100ZZ, it's not the powerhouse of the entire Astrox series. The Astrox 88s and the 99 still have more power, but I feel the main reasons to get this racket over, for example, the Astrox 88S is because this one is quicker than the 88S, has a bit more snap when it comes to defense and also mid-court shots. But I think with the 88S, you get a bit more power and also that kind of solid feel. Therefore, I would say, although this racket is quite all-rounded on the whole and it's more even balanced than most of the Astrox rackets, this is still more suited towards doubles because of the whippy nature and also its speed. And like I mentioned on power before, that is not to say that this racket doesn't have power. Power is still immense because don't forget, this is an Astrox racket. You're going to have more power on this than a Nanoflare series, of course, Arc Saber series and possibly even the Dura series. I'm only saying if you want a racket solely for explosive smashing, then of course the 88 and 99 is better. In terms of forecourt play, you can cut off shots really quickly with this, but the only issue is because it has a softer feel and a bit more kind of lag behind than the ZZ, it does take a bit more getting used to this racket if you're normally used to stiffer shafts. But if you use like a medium flex shaft like the Astrox 77 or just normal stiff shafts like the Dura 10, then I think you wouldn't really have an issue switching to this racket. Another big question about this racket is if you have the previous models like the 88 or the 77, whether this will be an upgrade. So in my ZZ review, I definitely said it is an upgrade. I feel with this one, if you're looking for more speed and a bit more snap, then it will be an upgrade. But however, if you're looking for more power, it will not be an upgrade in that sense. Precision on this racket will be fairly similar to the older models, so the only thing that's standing out is the handling and also the whip.